What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, man. It's been a minute since I even talked about the infamous iPhone 7, and I figured I would kind of make some sort of like guide list or checklist or whatever you want to call it about buying a specific used iPhone. And in this case, we're going to look at the iPhone 7. So if you're planning on buying an iPhone 7 in 2019, here's some couple of things that you might want to look out for before you actually go and pick it up. Now, the first thing is the new iPhones are coming out in the next couple months. So most people, even though you know the newer ones, most people are going to probably buy that. A lot of people are still going to end up buying the older ones. And in my opinion, the iPhone 7 is probably the biggest default in the used market because it's still being sold in the Apple stores as of now. And there's a lot of key things that people should figure out before buying a used iPhone 7, even a new one, but more specifically the used ones and obviously the used market. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is that my iPhone 7 that I personally own, I own two of them. Actually, I've owned a lot of them throughout my lifetime, but the two that I own currently, the iPhone 7 is probably the most problematic iPhone that I've ever owned. Okay, I have the most problems with this iPhone. Installing iOS 13 was super difficult. I boot looped on both my iPhone 7s that I bought, and maybe you won't, and maybe you'll get a lemon. That's perfectly fine. But in my experience, I can only tell you that when upgrading and mimicking the software in any way, I always had to go and restore my device and lose all the memory that was already on it, which for me isn't that big of a deal because I'm not using my iPhone 7 as a main device, so I don't have any like precious items on it, but you might, and that's something that you will have to kind of figure out and make sure that you don't get a device that has any problems with it. Now, the biggest issue in my opinion that I've seen is the audio issue that the iPhone 7s have had. Now, in this case, it's where some of the audio chips stop working, so you can't even hear anything over the earpiece or the speakers or whatever, and this could potentially make your iPhone not work properly, and in some cases I've seen this totally bricking some iPhones. Now, this is a pretty big deal. You don't want to end up getting an iPhone then having a ton of issues with it, and the iPhone 7 specifically is targeted with this audio IC. I think it's called the audio IC chip issue or whatever. Now, when you're getting an iPhone 7, okay, if you're getting it in person, I would highly recommend you making a phone call or just playing some things over the speaker, making sure both those things work. If they do, then most likely you might not run into any issues, but you could run into issues later on, so you can't necessarily default that you won't run into any issues. But another thing is if you're buying it online, the main thing you want to do is as soon as you pick it up and you power it on or whatever, make sure the speakers and the earpiece work. If they do, then you're set. If they don't, get a refund from the buyer, ship the phone back. They sent you a faulty system. As long as it says in the description that there's no issues with it or whatever, then you'll be set. But you don't want to get an iPhone that's not working, and the iPhone 7 will not work properly if its earpiece and its speakers are messed up. Now, that kind of covers up the main issues that you might have, but here's one thing that you might not even know about the iPhone 7 that the previous iPhones before it kind of were pretty easy at doing, and that specific thing is repairability. With the iPhone 7, if you want to repair any part of that device, it's going to be extremely hard. The battery, not so much. Really, any other piece, it's just the screen specifically. If you're planning on buying an iPhone 7 that has a cracked screen or whatever, you will 100% lose your Touch ID and your home button functionality if you swap the LCD screens. If you swap the glass on the front, then that's not bad. That's probably not going to cause any issues. But if you actually go and swap the whole LCD, you take out the top screen and you replace it with something else, that can cause some issues and you might actually lose your Touch ID and home button functionality. On the iPhone 7s and the newer devices, Apple stopped tethering the home button to the motherboard and the logic board. They started tethering it to the screen itself. So even if you repair the screen or whatever, most likely you might lose your home button, even if you keep the same logic board and everything. My iPhone 7, the white one, that has that problem. My iPhone 7, the black one, does not have that issue. But that is something you will have to kind of keep in mind, is that repairing this phone is not the easiest thing in the world. And if you can replace it and you can fix it, most likely you might lose your home button, but it's not that big of a deal even if you do lose it. Touch ID might be a bigger issue, but for my white iPhone 7, I haven't had the home button on that for like a year since I've owned it. I've only used the accessibility on it, so that's kind of annoying if I had to use it as a main device, but that is one thing you'll probably have to keep in mind. Now, to kind of tie everything up, I think the iPhone 7 is a great option. I don't think there's really anything wrong with it besides those things that I listed. I don't think there's really anything wrong with it in terms of a pure features standpoint or like power. I think it's still powerful enough. But these key things that I addressed are some things that you will have to 100% figure out and run it through your head before you go and buy a used iPhone 7. If you're buying a brand new one, most likely you might not run into any issues, but in the used market, these are some things that you might have to look out for. As a side note, I probably wouldn't recommend buying a 32 gig iPhone 7 anymore. I would at least go for a 128 model. You shouldn't pay more than like $250 for that for the 128 model, so eBay will probably be your best bet to buy it for the cheapest price. But if you want the best quality one, I would probably recommend getting it on Amazon. I'll find the cheapest one there and I'll link it straight in the description below. If you want to purchase it there, that'll mean so much. You can help support the channel at the same time. But that is pretty much it, man. If you have any questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section as well. Hit that like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I would really appreciate if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.